Hello everyone and welcome back to Closet Gaming. Today we are going to take a look at the Griftlands. This deck building roguelite that first started out as an RPG back in the day promises the vast story where every decision matters. Whether it can deliver on its promise is the question we will try to answer today. Griftlands is available on Steam for €16.79 or your regional equivalent. We all know the feeling when a game that looks great and you really want to play it gets cancelled. On the other hand, maybe it is the better solution. At least when compared to little bits of info constantly appearing, keeping you hooked, but just never delivering. Fans of the Game of Thrones books could probably write a separate book about waiting for a book, and even games have such titles among them. Games like Agent from Rockstar, Eider, Routine, and many more. And until recently, even the open-world hand-drawn RPG Griftlands. But Griftlands is among us, so let's see whether it lives up to the very long hype, as it is no longer just in alpha on the Epic Store, but also available in early access on Steam. And before the review itself starts, I need to say that Griftlands is no longer just an RPG game, at least when it comes to the core gameplay. The developers realized that if they continued on the path towards creating an RPG, they would have likely never finished. So, they turned the core gameplay loop into a card game instead. I'll be honest with you guys, there is a bit more I need to say before the review of the game itself unfolds. I need to tell you why Griftlands originally excited me. The stylized comic-like graphics inside a sci-fi world were certainly a big part of that, but the biggest thing for me was the advertised option to talk your way out of everything. I do like combat, but when a game proclaims you can talk your way out of everything, that's a challenge. And I love challenges. But then there's the card game. Because of the amazing success of Hearthstone and Slay the Spire, card game mechanics seem to be taking all over the world. And don't get me wrong, I like card games. Monster Train is an amazing successor to Slay the Spire, and Hearthstone is still one of the few games I play purely for fun. But that doesn't mean I want every game I play to be a card game. Now, we can finally delve into the game itself. Sadly, the first impression wasn't that great. The first few hours were confusing as heck. I was constantly scratching my head in confusion. This is because Griftlands doesn't shy away from just throwing you under the bus. The problem is that there is too much to learn too quickly. You get thrown into this alien world where everyone seems to have adopted Simish as their native tongue. Several fractions are trying to get in power, and common words are replaced by jargon. Thankfully, in dialogues the jargon is explained, but when you need explanations for your explanations, well, something is wrong. Then you finally get thrown into a fight, and there are so many more terms to learn. But, you know what? This is actually not criticism from my side. When I first heard of Griftlands, it was supposed to be a full-blown RPG. And while cards replace the core loop, by God, Griftlands is still an RPG at heart. It makes sense though, you just don't throw away likely hundreds of hours of hard work you already created, but somehow this was just not visible from the game's marketing. It looked like a card game with zero background story. Luckily, it was just sucky marketing, and the truth is that exploring the world and reading is an important feature in Griftlands. If I compared it to Monster Train, which I recently reviewed, there it was primarily about the battles. Here, it's primarily about the world. And once you realize that, it all starts coming together. I'll tell you more about the gameplay in a bit, but in essence, you find NPCs, you talk to them, accept a few quests, and solve them either by violence or by talking. Yes, the option to try to talk your way out of things remains here. While the combat is exactly as you'd expect it to be, turn-based strategy played out through cards, the talking part is just exquisite. It is an arena full of thoughts, arguments, determination, and many other modifiers. The only problem with it lays in the lack of information the game gives you about them. So it's up to you to figure them out. A better tutorial would certainly be very nice. The thing that will keep people who love old school RPGs playing Griftlands is choice. Nowadays, it sadly almost feels like an artifact from an era long forgotten, but Griftlands comes with decisions. Decisions that actually alter the game and its story. And it gives the game great depth and even replayability. For example, if you play as Sal, one of the two currently available characters, you seem to have a clear goal. Kill Casio. But you don't have to. And depending on what you do, this changes the behavior of characters and even what quest will be available to you further on. But to be completely honest, in terms of the main storyline, there are only two solutions to it. More would be amazing, and I hope, really hope that more will come in the future. But playing the game and finishing the story in both ways took me about 8 hours each, and each time I noticed different side quests, so there is definitely enough content. I should also mention that the factions are important as well. Depending on who likes you, who hates you, you get different buffs and debuffs which apply to both types of combat. And there is not a way to play the game to get everyone to be friends with you, because over time, you will get into situations where you need to get rid of someone, and even if you do it in a non-violent fashion, his friends are still not going to be happy about it. And from a story perspective, you don't always get a good or an evil choice. Or even the lesser evil versus a big ol' evil choice. Sometimes it's just pure evil choices. Good luck with choosing. Well, it's finally time to talk about the card mechanics. I wasn't avoiding them, but, well, Griftlands is just so much more than just another card game. Nonetheless, it's also a card game and it needs to be talked about. Griftlands doesn't shy away from trying to become the best, but it's also pretty standard. In the violent combat, you pick cards like attacks and defensive cards while trying to use your available energy as perfectly as you can. And the talking combat is somewhat similar, just all the types of cards are named differently. At least this is the case with Sal. But when you play as Rook, the other character, it becomes, well, a bit more random. He's sort of like Two-Face from Batman. Some of the cards only work if you get heads, or a snail in this case, and if you get tails, you're out of luck. The card does nothing and disappears into the discard pile. This may seem like a horrible mechanic, but there are ways to alter luck to be a bit more in your favor. Griftlands also tries to retain a bit of its RPG origin in the card game portion. This is run through the ability to level up your cards up to 10 times. You need to gain XP for your cards to be able to level them, and pretty much the same system also exists for your crafts, which are character upgrades. When looking at the visual side of things, at first glance, Griftlands may appear as a cyberpunk game just trying to cash in on Cyberpunk 2077, but no! While it does have elements of cyberpunk, it also just takes sci-fi and combines it into its own unique thing. The story takes place in a far future when humanity is colonizing the universe, and one of their targets for colonization is an unknown planet that features the continent of Havaria. This dirty space rock already has humanoid frogs living on it, some of which worship their deep sea god, and a big portion of its surface is covered in swamps, where you actually can find advanced technology. Essentially, it's a mixture of many influences from H.P. Lovecraft, cyberpunk, 80s animation, and even heavy metal. But sadly, while the graphical style was inspired by metal, at least in part, I cannot say the same for the music. If there's one thing the game desperately needs, it's better music. When you get a game that looks this good, it should also sound good. And here, best comparison I can think of is elevator music. And that's not music anyone wants to be compared to. So, in conclusion, whether you should buy Griftlands really depends on what you expect. Did you want a pure RPG? Well, then it's probably not for you. Do you want a pure card game? Again, it's probably not meant for you. But if you like RPGs for the story and are okay with battling through cards, yeah, Griftlands will be a great fit in your collection. And for the amount of work that went into Griftlands, the price tag is fairly low, so I'd say go and buy it. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you liked the review, and if you do, please consider giving it a like, maybe subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, share it with your friends. Sharing really does make a difference. And also comment if you have anything you would like to add. See you guys later with more gaming content.